Peace, family. Peace, peace, peace. Welcome to Sankofa Video Books and Cafe. As we move into our event this evening, I'm here to introduce the events that we're having at Sankofa coming up over this next week, and then we will hand it over to the host of today's events. Tomorrow, we have a poetry workshop with Mama Laini Mataka. Mama Mataka is somebody who I have heard called the greatest poet of her generation by some people who I really respect, like Mama Nkechi Taifa, and other people who have gotten the chance to really absorb her work, which has been largely based out of DC. It's a really special opportunity. That's tomorrow in the afternoon from 12 p.m. to 2 p.m. I really encourage you to take advantage of that. Extraordinary woman Mama Mataka is. On Saturday evening, from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m., we have a book discussion with author Dr. Makungu Akinyela on his book, Culture, Politics, Spirituality, and Practice, a book of resistance and critical theory for disturbing times. On Sunday, we have the third and final event in our Politics of Kenya series about modern Kenya, with some of the folks who have been here for the last few weeks with us, helping us understand why it is that when we talk about different crises across the continent right now, Kenya's name keeps coming up as a perpetrator, as an ally of the forces that are seeking to wreak these harms and this havoc in these regions. So we're really trying to interrogate that deeply. We had an event about pre-colonial Kenya and then Kenya's anti-colonial effort and coming out of the explicit colonial era. And this is our third and final event in the series, as I said, where we're talking about what Kenya is going through, what the Kenyan people are going through under the Ruto government now, and the ways that the impacts of their government are spilling out into the rest of the continent and the world. On Tuesday, we have the Artivism Jam Session. This is of special interest to any Howard students who are in the audience. It's a group of Howard students and recent alums who come and they have this amazing jam session. Many instruments up here. People, it's kind of semi-open mic. Usually some brilliant performances come out of that. Even if you're not a Howard student, I encourage you to come check it out. It's a really beautiful thing that happens here every Tuesday. And thank you. That is at 8 p.m., 8 to 10 p.m. Thank you for asking. Hope that means you'll be there. And then next Sunday, we have Congo on Our Mind. Congo on Our Mind is part of our Every Other Sunday on Our Mind series, which began with Gaza on Our Mind and expanded to Sudan on Our Mind, Congo on Our Mind, and Haiti on Our Mind. And so every other Sunday, we approach a different circumstance of those four. And this Sunday happens to be, next Sunday, happens to be Congo on Our Mind. So given that this is an audience we presume to be interested in Congo and Congolese people, this may be something that you find both illuminating and in some ways enjoyable, although that's not the highest purpose of the event. The purpose of the event is for us to commune with the people of Congo through art and scholarship, conversation, and really understand the way that what's happening in Congo is linked to what's happening in Gaza, is linked to what's happening in Haiti, is linked to what's happening in Sudan and in Kenya, and the ways that these threads, understanding the threads that bind these situations around the world together. So that is Sunday the 7th at 7 p.m. Hope to see you there. Without any further ado, to introduce our event is my friend, whose name I forgot to learn before the event, but give it up right now.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Sankofa's video and books for today's event, Child of Congo, where it all begins. My name is Serafina Atibu. I'm a student here at Howard University. I'm from Houston, Texas, but I'm originally from Goma, Congo. And I'm here today with Friends of Congo. As a part of Friends of Congo's efforts to amplify Congolese voices and knowledge production, we bring you Laurène. Laurène is a 25-year-old writer based in Vienna, Austria, of Congolese heritage. Beginning at the age of 17, Laurène used to attend the Vienna African Writers Club led by African Studies of the University of Vienna, building a strong passion for poetry. It was in 2021. However, after a spoken word performance at the African Diaspora Festival in Klagenfurt, that she chose to take this practice seriously. In 2022, Laurène took part in a group exposition titled On their Schwanen, sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, Balloon Dona, to prove that poetry could be performed as much as displayed. During the Vienna Design Week last year, she had the pleasure of performing as part of her second group exhibition, A House is Not a Home, by curator and mentor Tonika Hunter. Perhaps her fondest moments was when Laurène attended a writer's residence at Echo Correspondence until the end of the year 2023, and completed her first full-length poetry book titled Child of Congo. As of late, she has been published by Brittle Paper, The Shallow Tales Review, and a part of African Migration Report Poetry Anthology. Please help me in introducing Laurène to the stage.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today. Thank you for that lovely introduction. Shall we sit down or get comfortable?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pleasure being here. I've only had a couple of days to do a bit of research, but I think there's a lovely events that occurred here, so it's only an honor for me to also present my own book. Do you want to?
Yeah, to give some background of the book for everyone. In this compelling debut, Laurène delves into the complex intersection of identity, history, and resilience in the face of unimaginable adversity. Child of Congo is an exploration of the human spirit born out of the crucible of conflict and displacement. The Democratic Republic of the Congo, ravaged by decades of internal strife and exploitation, serves as the backbone for this deeply personal journey. These verse weaves the struggles of a generation torn between a globalized existence and African heritage. This anthology is not merely a lyrical reflection, it's also a call to action, bringing light to the forgotten underbelly of colonialism and neocolonialism, unveiling hidden truths behind the world's reliance on Congo's vital resources. From the horrors of forced labor to the ongoing struggle against rebel groups, these poems bear witness to the darkest histories known to mankind. Though the eyes of a child split between worlds, we see the intricate dance of identity formation, cultural legacy, and perseverance. This work provokes leaders to confront uncomfortable realities of our interconnected world and the often overlooked consequences of global politics. So we'll get some reading from Laurène, and then we'll be opening it up for any questions about the reading.
Great. So as you may have heard, this story is about mainly about Congo, but it really all started at this poem that I'm about to read, which is called Child of Congo, and shares the title name of the book in itself. Just to give it a little bit of background, so as you told in the introduction, I took part in my first group exhibition, and the Schönen Blauen Donau. So I don't know if there's other German speakers in here, but that was the long title. Mm-hmm. And what was so important about this exhibition is because Vienna, or Austria and all, very small country in Central Europe that people do not know about, and especially when it comes to the black people living there. For a long time, we have fought for identity and making sure that we're also part of the conversation. And bringing forth that group exhibition, it was a way for us to show that we're here. And we also have, a range of talents. So I was asked for the first time to write about myself. And that's how I came about with the poem that I'm about to read, Child of Congo, and also the title of the book. Can everybody hear me? Yes? Okay, great. Child of Congo. My story begins in the heart of the warmest of lands. As it passes down through word of mouth and the labor of cold hands. Following outbreaks of turbulence, my family finally felt the pressure. For the sake of the children, forced to flee in the arms of their own oppressors, now the grown child is being questioned by elders about her roots. Unaware of her own questions about herself that started to bear its own fruits, and amongst her classmates, lessened for her differences and accents, well, at the end of the day, if I'm not the reflection carried by the sun, then I'm the night of a full moon. If I'm not the force that makes the ground, I'm the river between. A barrier in my mother's tongue, however, that may pierce through any surface of a pigmented skin. I understand power structure, and it understands me. As I stand before thee from lifting the skin and bones of my own 2 feet, as I said before, my story begins in the heart of the warmest of lands, where the red sun in the corner finds rest, and fresh water meets the sand. Scramblers cannot place nations and borders to try and separate us. But where are you really from? From the place you were born, or the place you belong? Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. When I first read that part of the book, my favorite part was the sentence where you say, but where are you really from? From the place you were born or the place you were belong? As I mentioned earlier, I'm also from Congo and I grew up in Houston, Texas. So this fight with identity is something that I also dealt with. And I was wondering, how do you currently find your own sense of identity, and how did you get through this complex relationship of like identity formation and your cultural legacy as well?
That's a great question. Before even it came to this book, I've had really little experience with my heritage. Looking at the way that I grew up, my parents were kind of a construct. They were separated when I was already young, whereas my mom was more distant about, her homeland. My father found joy and pride in speaking about the Congo and our lineage and our family. So I had these 2 experiences at once, which made me almost hesitant on calling myself Congolese or viewing myself from that part of the world because of those different approaches. So as I grew up and as I was doing research for this particular book, I felt a feeling of despair just looking at through the history of Congo, and especially in the Eastern Congo, which both of my parents are from, and you would know as well. There has just been a history of continuous wars, conflict, and crimes happening on that piece of land, to the point that I couldn't find one, moment of fresh air, so to speak. And as I grew up in Austria, that it almost made me feel fearful to be identifying myself with those, scars of the past. So, as you mentioned from the last question for me, it was a way to kind of laying the map of the book and expressing the duality that I have within myself of those two separate identities. So as much as I can speak of Congo now, I can identify myself with the people there. I think that coming in the future, it will always be that sense of duality, just because I didn't get to be to grow there as a child and view all the catastrophes, at first lens. So I don't know if I'm responding to your question correctly.
I understand, and I'm also wondering, despite not being there to witness the issues, how has it continued to affect your life now, current day?
Yeah, I mean, the last massacre in Goma, I had family members who were there, so I was really there in first line. I'm very close with my father's side, and at the time I was also speaking to, I think a week prior to the massacre, we had like a family meeting speaking about, our dreams or goals for this year, as everyone else would do. And then, complete silence, I would say. I received the last message from these family members in the morning saying that there were just gunshots going and not stopping, and then complete silence. So that prolonged to a week of not being in contact with them. And that was my first experience. As I'm in my family, when it comes to my siblings, in my father's side, I was the only person who was financially stable. I had to undertake a lot of steps to help them, which I was not prepared for, because of course, I'm only 25, so what do I really know about, wars and so on and forth. But I don't think I've ever said this story, but there was a night that I was in Paris because I wanted to go to London, and I happened to meet for the first time a random man here. So sorry, not random, so Randa, the name. And yeah, so we had that brief talk, and he's from Rwanda and I'm from Congo, so we had this pleasurable talk about just the history in that area and everything else, and we actually exchanged numbers. So during that time that it kind of exploded, my family members did not eat, of course, because they couldn't, for over a week, and they were in need of emergency food. I reached out to this random man because I remember that he also lives in the area of Goma, and my family members crossed the borders, and he was the one who actually gave them the first meal since those attacks that happened for a week at the time. So, there's so many things I could share about that experience, so on and forth. Even of the book, we were able to do a donation for the very first event that I had, which also saved their lives and made sure that they could a town outside of Goma. So there's so many things I could tell you about, but of course that experience itself has changed my life and has brought so much more merit to what I had written, just in the right to residency, because now I really had forehand an experience with that conflict that I've heard my family, my parents, and everyone else talking about for years. So yeah.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing. We open the floor up for any questions or comments anyone may have in the audience.
Good evening. First of all, I want to thank you for being here and for sharing your story. I think it's so universal that we as people of African descent, of the African diaspora, deal with questions of identity, whether you live in the United States, wherever you may live. And so I don't think it's unique to you, and I want you to feel that there are people who are experiencing something very similar, whether they live here or whether they live anywhere in the world. And the one thing that I think we have in common as it relates to these diasporic experiences is that the imprint of those of Caucasian ancestry has a lot to do with that. And the longer you are absent from or disconnected from those you have come from, because I too resonated with the last line in your poem, where you are from, or what was it again? I really like that line.
Where you belong?
Or where you belong. Because I think we as people of African descent, we belong wherever we are. The problem is who we are mentally is oftentimes disconnected with who we are in the physical way and who we are spiritually. So I appreciate that you come here to share your work, and I thank you. But you're not alone. You are not alone. So thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. Can I get your name?
Oh, sure. My name is Lillian Green.
Okay, so
and I'm also a poet, so I'll share that with you.
I would love you to talk to you afterwards. Thank you for sharing.
Anyone else?
Yeah, sure.
All right, thank you guys so much. I think we're gonna move on to the next poem.
All right, so the next poem, because we were just talking about wars, as there's so many genocides happening across the world, I mean, at this point, I lost count myself. I did wanted to personify a poem for the survivors and the people who perish in those circumstances. And I wrote this poem exactly a year prior to the recent massacre that happened. And, it's a different experience to, hear tales from your parents and your family members from afar, but then having a personal experience where you feel like you have, the life of someone is in your hands. So even now, I'm in loss of words of what this poem means to me, but I hope you will enjoy it as I recite it. So the poem is titled Silent Genocide. There's a silent genocide happening in the Diamond and Gold District. Its eastern citizens appear to be streaming in terror, but no acoustic roughness dare come out of their mouth. Instead, the horror is made visible through the purple rings beneath their sight. And within orbs, the scala has changed to blood red. Tears both running from their bloody eyes and noses, as if they had just seen Stanley's ghost. While they flee to a neighboring village, every step becomes lighter until they have completely transpired into weightless beings. Careful not to make a sound, they cross the streets and fields, trying not to walk on eggshells. Only the empty shells are planted grenades. When a bullet, helplessly reaches their back, a transparent liquid quietly descends their flesh and leaves the temple they once housed, taking the source of life with them. even by the way bombs fall from the skies. You would have thought it would unhurried rain, calming the thirst of a fiery ground, or homemade snowflakes, for they never cared to wow. Dead bodies are not met with proper burials like we know of them in the West. They silently reverse into dust on the same soul they have been executed. When a baby is born, it doesn't take long for it to crawl back into its mother's womb and entirely erase itself from existence. The journalist, in the midst of it all, takes out a device, but the camera doesn't flash. It stands still. And on the way home to the working desk, a pencil and piece of paper both escape to the tree they were once cut. There's this chance with just a few lines sung by citizens turned into overnight soldiers. It goes, "My mother gave birth to me. I was born to die." But the hymn can only be heard by birds as it crosses the battlefield. It makes its way to the heavens. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Again, such a wonderful poem, one that I feel like I can personally relate with. You speak about knowing the hardships of people back in Congo, and growing up in Houston, I didn't get a chance to learn too much about Congo, and it wasn't until I got to college where I got the opportunity to do so. So how does, and you even mentioned it in your poem about not many people knowing about the issues that are going back home and what's happening there, and why do you feel like that is the case, and there isn't too many eyes there as much as there may be here?
That's a great question. I mean, I've personally grown up in Central Europe. Think I've been on I would say 4 different educational systems. My favorite subject in school was actually history. And what I found it fascinating, even as a young, at a young age, is how every regions or every nations had their own version of history. Now, I remember Austria. It seems like they had almost like a gap in history. We could say probably around the 1900s, of course, and then the early 2000s because of obvious reasons. And then in the UK, the best way I can explain is they like to see everything in a positive light. Facing the Great Fire, although it, basically burned down the entire city, but, it got rid of rats and of infections and so on and so forth. And observing that as a young age already, I knew that history gets written by the winners. So in that sense, now as a grown person, seeing, the history of Congo, there was never a time for us to breathe, but also for us to tell our own stories. And although we have all these different genocides happening, and I would like to say, I'm sorry for the lack of better words, but a rebirth in Pan-Africanism, we see with the things happening in West Africa, IS and Ibrahim Traoré and so on and so forth. And even here, I haven't been here for a while, but in New York, I have that sense as well. I see, the flag everywhere and so on and so forth. But for some reason, Congo is never into place in that conversation or put in that equation. I would like to believe that, quite similar to the way that I was thinking as a child, we tend to have a hard time to put ourselves in the shoes of others. And that is the reason why I like about books, or what I always used to love about books, because it extracts, somebody's skin color, somebody's gender, somebody's age, status, and so on and forth. You only get words. So it's hard for you to judge the narrator in that sense. And it is hard for you not to be able to see commonalities and similarities with how a person thinks. Because all in all, if we really look at ourselves as human beings, we are just thoughts and voices speaking. And what I've started to understand, also being now closer to my family back in Congo, is they hold dreams such as we do. They don't like to wake up in the morning to go to school just like we do. And all the things that make us humans, And I'm sorry, I lost my track of thoughts. But that's just to say, using our differences to view our commonalities rather to divide ourselves is, I think, the best way forward.
A part of your poem, you said, my mother gave birth to me. I was born to die. I was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit more on that.
Yes. So there's a documentary. I think I also left on social media. There was a documentary about Goma. I don't want to be mistaken, but I think it was BBC. And at the beginning of this documentary, they are playing a chant happening in Goma. And those are men, women who have lost their loved ones in war. So they've decided to take arms and continue fighting for them. So I translated the word chant that they were singing, and those are the words that came out, because I think it's a very powerful chant, and I will urge anyone to listen on your own time. And just a powerful, introduction to any documentary, in my opinion, which I wanted to immortalize and have a part of my poem.
It's beautiful. Was there any questions or comments from the audience?
We love it. Just a quick question: are there other poets in the audience right now? Any share of hands? Just one. Okay. Okay. Oh, two. Nice.
So I just wanted to follow up on the point you made about how you liked history as a child. And when you think about the history of the Congo and the Berlin Conference that carved up the continent of Africa for the benefit of these European nations who have continued to benefit from the resources that are there, but the people who they brutalized, oppressed, whatever words you want to use to describe it, we are in a store called Sankofa, which is about looking back to understand the history. So it's so important that you have begun to do that, because for each one of us, there's so much in this country, for example, that people don't know. We are continuing to learn about the hidden figures of black women who are like math geniuses. And right now we're in a country that is seeking to close the National Museum of African American History and Culture, which really is just a small aspect of what we have contributed to what makes this country great. So I commend you for looking into the history, because that is where our truth lies. And to the extent that people seek to erase it, they never will. But at the same time, I think it's important that you're raising the point that you are looking into that, because those of us who don't understand the past are destined to repeat it. And since we are in Sankofa, we must look back. So,
well said. I have to say, one of the 4 education systems I was under was also the United States. Yes, I went to an American Christian school in Austria, so I learned a little bit. But even now, I did my GED exams and passed. Yay! But I even had the pleasure of learning a bit further about the American history, and hopefully in the future I will get more exposed to that. So thank you for sharing this.
Thank you.
I had a question for you. In my own research about what's going on in Congo, I've heard a lot about the toll that it's taken specifically on women and children, so I'm glad that you highlighted that in your poem. I wanted to know how this demographic of people can be especially supported in what's going on right now.
That is a lovely question that I don't think I will be best qualified to answer, but that is what we are partnered with Friends of the Congo today. So I will definitely advise you to reach out to Morris, which I think he's part of the audience at the moment, to directly give you accurate answers for that question.
Thank you.
I think we have one more.
Oh, I'm so sorry, y'all. I'm so sorry.
Hello. First of all, thank you so much for sharing all of this. You've mentioned that you have family in East Congo and Goma while everything was going down.
Yeah.
I do too. I'm also from East Congo myself, born in Goma. And I wanted to know how you processed that whole thing, because experiencing not only your people, but also your family going through this, and you're away and you're not physically there for them. I wanted to know if you had any thoughts and comments on processing that from far away, and also dealing with who to talk about it, because sometimes, because there's so much going on in the world, not everyone will care about Congo the way we do, and how you dealt with all that.
Absolutely, I definitely agree with that sentiment. I think it just went back to despair. I'm trying to remember that moment, but I think it just went back to despair, not knowing that not understanding that I did not have the tools, and I wasn't unprepared. Of course, I had outside help, which is, as I mentioned, that person from Rwanda, and also Friends of the Congo, which is an organization from DC, by the way, guys. So, who are also directly helping and providing and doing so much more for places such as Goma and Eastern Congo. I think that particular moment had brought up really difficult conversations, but of course it's not like I can just cut off my life and, completely devote myself entirely to what was happening. So at the same time, I was just publishing my book, having my first events, having my first run-outs. And I think it goes back to that duality of kind of having to balance those both identities. Of course, people know that I'm from Congolese heritage, where I come from, but they don't have an in-depth understanding that, I can be comfortable as I am here and have, family members fighting for their life in a completely different area. And I have to say, especially about this particular massacre that happened, of course, it is discouraging not seeing your peers or your friends being as vocal as they could be. But also, in my end, having been exposed to so many information, I can just give an example, because I was trying to help my family members calm down and staying, not making wrong decisions. And I remember working one day and, they telling me that they found the body of a child in a particular let's just say, dead in a particular way that looked like he was probably tortured before executed. Now, that is not something that somebody would want to see at any point at their lives. But for a lot of times, that was the reality of my family members at the time. And really, just to give a final point on that, really just having an understanding of the layers that comes when it's about wars. Because when we think about wars, usually we only think about violence, and which is a really big part of it. But it's also like it's almost like your freedom also gets reduced in many ways. That could be the amount of food that you're allowed to take in, the aids that you're getting from family members outside, security, and just a lot of things that I was not aware of beforehand. But I'm going to cut this short. That's just to say, it opened my eyes to a lot of layers that I was unaware of beforehand. And also the fact that the resilience that comes from Congolese people. Because I don't think that during that time, and even as I published my book, there was a community that could have given me the courage to even be there and to introduce my book at that particular time if it wasn't for the Congolese, people and their support. So just to end it on a good note, that's just to say thank you.
Thanks so much for sharing your personal experiences. It's really enlightening. I'm really interested in the language piece. You talked about the chant. I didn't catch the whole chant, so if you could say it again at some point. And then the question I have specifically is around language. I'm not sure the specific language you speak, but I've always thought about language as an expression of basically logging communities' experiences. And so me, I'm Nigerian American, and sometimes my language is Igbo, and it doesn't always evolve. It's a dying language because there's a lot of pressure to assimilate, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm just wondering, with the experiences that are going on in Congo, do you see new phrases, new languages, or even dependence on certain words to kind of that are coming up? And then I just wanted to make one comment. I recently saw, I think it was on Instagram, that this lady was talking about in Southern Africa, particularly Swahili and Bantu languages, that there's not a concept of far present future. It's more so the direct present and immediate past. I just wanted to know if there's that restriction also on time, particularly within your language.
That's a lovely question that I'm unfortunately not qualified to answer, because my parents never taught me their native language. I do speak an expensive amount of 3 languages, but they're all Europeans. And I want to learn. You mentioned Swahili, which is also spoken in Eastern Congo, but I do know from younger communities there, Lingala seems to be now the norm too, and it's kind of favored. So I cannot answer your beautiful questions on that, but you mentioned also the chant. So the translation of the chant, which is thinking was sang in Swahili, was my mother gave birth to me, I was born to die, is part of an introduction from a BBC documentary that I watched and personally thought it was very touching. If you want a direct link or hear it yourself, I could definitely guide you towards that after our session. And yeah, thank you again for that lovely question that I can unfortunately not answer. So
I could potentially help with the language question if needed, because I know some Lingala and Swahili.
Let's go. All right.
What's the question again?
Sorry, make you go back and forth. So the question is like, I know in certain Bantu languages, there's not a concept of the far present and future because you can't really experience it. I'm wondering, two-part questions. The first question is, due to like a lot of the experiences that's going on in Congo, are you seeing new lingua franca coming up, or are there a dependency on old certain concepts that are used to describe what's happening? And then the second part of the question is that same restriction on time within any of the Congolese languages? Is there an over dependence on past, present, or future, or an overlooking of either?
Okay, I'll answer it the way I understood it. The first part, you mentioned like because of the conflict, the dependence on the languages and everything. Like she said previously, Lingala is really used, but mainly in Kinshasa. Congo is very big and it has different parts. If we focus on the area where we have the conflict, so Eastern Congo, the main language there is Swahili. The issue with that is that during the conflict, so in kind of more around the city, like around Kinshasa, it became kind of an issue when people heard Swahili, because unfortunately, Swahili is also spoken in Rwanda. And so there's a lot of tension in regards to Rwanda because of their connection to everything that's happening. And so people in Kinshasa that were from East Congo, where we speak Swahili, were very afraid to walk around and speak Swahili freely because they didn't want people to connect them to Rwanda and everything that's happening, which is very sad because Swahili is part of Congo's culture as well. But people from East Congo were scared to speak it outside of East Congo. And the second part, when it comes to time, it's very interesting that you know that, because in Lingala, it's very confusing when you're talking about time. Lelo could mean yesterday, it could mean today. Like when it comes to time, it's very tricky. But with other words that you say, like the context will make you understand if it's about today or yesterday, but there's no different words for yesterday, today, and tomorrow in Lingala. But in Swahili, there's they separated.
Wow, thank you for that lovely information.
Thank you.
I'm learning something new as well.
Anyone else? I think we're going to be wrapping it up today. Thank you, Laurène, for coming and being able to speak on some of your experiences. And thank you at Sankofa for allowing us and giving us the space. And thank you for our audience for being here with us today. Thank you.
Thank you. If you do want to get your copy signed or have a lovely conversation, I'm still there around. So, yeah. And again, thank you, Sankofa, Friends of the Congo, for organizing this lovely event.
Thank you.